we've had a good trip so far, and welcome to the gallery that we call the Canadian Rockies. In fact, what you're looking at around you are individual pieces of art and works of art that have been that are actually works in progress. And these works of art, these pieces of art, have been created by 3 artists in a collaborative manner. And what you see today looks much different in the past, and it's going to look much different in the future. So these artists have collaborated together to create these unique features. And they all have names. And the name of the first artist is Depp. What's his name? Depp. His last name is Ozician. Depp Ozician. So Depp is the cake artist. And Depp likes to put on the layers of the cake, and it's layer after layer after layer. In fact, Depp is a little bit OCD about it, and he just keeps building layers and layers and layers. It's sort of non-stop. And Depp does it several different ways. Depp does it by using, for example, large shallow seas, which in fact used to be right here. This used to be a large, flat, shallow sea. And over time, corals and reefs and sediments washed into the bottom of the sea and formed layer after layer after layer. Another way that Depp creates a layer is just eroding the material off the continent and forming the big deltas that lots of the big cities are built on, like Vancouver, for example, or New York. And then another way might be through volcanics. There might be a volcanic explosion and a lava flow. So as you can see, each one of these layers is quite different. So Depp just keeps building them and building them and building them. But then comes Teck. Teck is the other artist. His last name is Tonic. So Tectonic. And Tectonic is the cake shaper. And before I tell you how Teck shapes the cake, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how our Earth is built. Now, our Earth, a big sphere, has a crust on the outside that actually floats on something called a mantle. And the mantle is made of magma. You might know it as lava when it comes to the surface, and then we have a core in the middle. That crust is actually broken up into little pieces, and they kind of float around, and sometimes they bang into each other. And in fact, that's how these mountains are created. And they were created when one continent, Pacific plate, came into the North American plate. And what happens is, and I'm just going to show you with my hand, in fact, you guys can pass that around, is I've got the Pacific plate coming in, I've got the North American plate. As it's going under, it's kind of buckling it up, kind of like that. And that's where all the earthquakes and all the volcanoes on Earth happen, where 2 continents come together. We call those subduction zones. Well, we have various names, but it's a subduction zone around here. And so what happens is Teck, like his friend Depp, is a little bit OCD about creating, and as it's pushing, he's constantly pushing up these layers, as you can see in the snow here, and there's kind of buckling. So the continents come from this side, and it's just pushing layer after layer. And what you see are these long valleys with these mountains on either side. But that's not where it ends. So you see we've got these long ridges. So now we've got a cake that's been layered. We've got a cake that's been shaped. What do you do with the cake when it's done?
Eat it?
You eat it, precisely. So that's where Ero comes in. E-R-O. Jean. And Ero uses lots of different methods to eat the cake, but one of them is something called glaciers. And glaciers are big hunks of ice. We have a glacier just sitting right over there in the valley. And those glaciers come in and they scoop out little parts of these ridges, and they do it in their own unique way. And sometimes they go along the ridges. So these glaciers continue to build and form these mountains, and some of them flow down these valleys, creating big U-shaped valleys like the one we see here. And here's a picture of what it would have looked like a long time ago. The tops of these peaks would have just been peeking out. And then they create perhaps mountains, or sometimes we call horns. Like, can anybody think of a mountain that's got horn in the name?
Cinnabon.
Yeah, well, Matterhorn would be an example. And the Assiniboine is in fact our version of the Matterhorn here in Canada. And so as you can see, these are 3 artists that have collaborated together over hundreds of millions of years to create unique pieces of art which will look much different in the future, and they look much different in the past.